Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in and watching Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I am Chris Carter. I am here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What has caught your attention in the automotive world?
There's so many things going on right now. You could start with the crazy people that are tearing up the Tesla supercharger stations and the places, and then I watched them say, "Hey, I got insurance on all this stuff. You're not hurting me. You're hurting yourself because your insurance rates are going to go up from all the damage." So that was one thing. And I thought, that's fun, but that makes a good point, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, he's like the richest guy in the world. He has all the money and he has insurance to cover that stuff. And a lot of the stuff is getting done to people that are just driving the cars that have nothing to do with them.
Can you imagine that? But, you're the one you go to gets wrecked by someone and you're just like, but
how about your car?
I didn't.
You just drive one and you're like, all I'm doing is driving one. Oh, it's crazy.
It's all quite insane.
But,
it is quite insane. Our world is a bit insane in certain places and insane in the membrane.
So here locally, though, I don't know if it's a more fun note or not, they've been really trying to crack down on street racing because there's a lot of it. I live in an area where I can witness to a lot of it, and there are people on motorcycles literally doing 160 miles an hour in the city limits, and they can't chase them. Highway Patrol can, but the city officers can't, and how would you?
Right.
You know? So they've made new laws. We're making it, am I right, Shannon? Did they say they can make it a felony for certain offenses for certain high speed? There you go. Chris says yes, because he's been listening to the news on his station. So if you've got like two guys drag racing going 150 miles an hour in local streets, yeah, that could be big. So they said, let's open up some sanctioned local events. And I always thought they had them because we went to watch those street.
Well, that is what has happened. I'm friends with some of the folks from the Siouxland Sports Car Club.
We watched those. We've been to them.
And they have now gotten permission to once again do their events.
Did they stop doing them?
Yeah, because in the city they were going to give them exhibition driving tickets.
That's nuts
for where they were at in the parking lot.
Okay, because they were at the fairgrounds, and I went to them, and then I was just thinking like a year ago I was going to ask you because one of their guys worked for us, and Josh, and I was like, what? Why don't you do that anymore? I didn't realize that was the case. So here's my question: the
state actually passed a law this year. And as soon as that law was passed, then the city thank goodness, they jumped on and said, hey, your group, you have controlled events. They're sanctioned events. It's safe. You guys are watching out for safety. You're not reaching super high rates of speed with these course races that they're doing for the club. And so I'm very happy for their group that they've been able to get permission again to hold their events. Chris is just dying to say something.
I just have to say that all of the public debate that I've heard about it, and I've heard quite a bit, or seen quite a bit of the debate about the subject, and none of the debate has anything to do with what was passed or what the ordinance says or what the consequences or none of it has been accurate. The debate that people are talking about is hardly related.
Because the law that was passed was to be able to give sanctioned groups the opportunity to do what they did.
Right.
And the law enforcement folks didn't have a law to stand on to say that they weren't exhibition driving. I think that, that's to me getting sideways on things and not just letting things happen. But from the legality standpoint of it, I'm sure that there's people that advise them that said, hey, you shouldn't be doing this unless the law allows it. Mm-hmm. Let's get these laws straightened out.
And this affects everybody across the country that listens to Under the Hood. I've lived in other cities where it takes place, but my question, and it's great to have a place to do it legally, but my question is to you guys, when we were growing up, well, not you, Chris, you're still a pup, but maybe a little bit. When we were growing up, Shannon, we had some fast cars. I had a very fast car, but everybody didn't have access to a fast car. Most of the people that were out driving around, we'd go to the Hallsville Dragway and drag race on the weekend, but a lot of the cars if you broke into the 13s, you had a fast car. If you had a motorcycle that broke into the low 13s, you had a fast motorcycle. And it cost you some money. I mean, some big bucks to go any faster than that, or you had to be really talented. Today, it doesn't take much to have a 10-second or a 9-second bike. And people with no experience are out there
you just have
riding.
to write a check.
Yeah. And they've seen so much.
Or Venmo.
When you watch these shows, Fast and the Furious and things like that, and you got all these people out on the road driving, they don't know that they can't do it. So many people watched the backflips on snowmobiles and four-wheelers and things like that they said, oh, I can do that. And then they just did it, and then they got good at it. I've got some friends that are officers in Sioux Falls who have said, there are a lot of extremely talented people riding those bikes that are extremely fast, and this is how they express their fun,
their talent, their art.
But my thought is, when we were younger, we didn't have as much of this because I don't think we had as much access to it. If you and I had if everyone around us had access to it today, I think it'd be the same thing. I think we would have had it back then, the speed, because everybody would have had it, so it would have been easy.
I'm going to agree with you, and then I'm going to throw a little water on that because I had some friends that had the slowest, crappiest cars, and they're the ones that ended up doing some of the stupidest stuff.
Oh, they always tried to do it.
but they didn't have the speed.
Yeah, so you didn't.
When I watched a road be ramped in a Datsun 210, I realized that you could really fly a car like that.
You guys are forgetting. What are you guys, 60? You're almost
Russ
60.
made it sound like he was 100 years older than you when he made that statement.
Yeah, you guys are almost 60. Here's what
we're over the precipice of the middle of that 50s.
Here's what you're forgetting, Russ, 100%. It was exactly the same when you were 20. Exactly the same as today.
It is.
Everybody who was 55 and 60 and older,
get off my lawn,
thought you guys were crazy, and they talked about when they were kids and how people didn't have the cars and only the certain guys had the hot
Here's
rods.
the thing, Chris. Shannon and I can still do it.
And your dads, when they were 20, there were people that are now 140 going, these kids today with their motorized carts, it's all the same. You think in 1880, there wasn't a podcast where they were saying, these guys with their horses, you hook those up to a buggy. You don't just ride them around willy-nilly.
I love your
I love your
intergenerational combination there.
This has always been the case. All right, let's take a call.
My only change has been, as I've gotten older, I go, oh, that's cool. They're going fast. But now I say, there goes an organ donor.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Mark. Mark, you're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Well, I have a 2020 Chevrolet Silverado. It's a 2500. Has those big mirrors on the sides.
Yeah.
And backed out of the garage one day and hooked the mirror on the side of the garage door. And broke the mirror on the right-hand side, the passenger side. So I got on the internet and I found a mirror of General Motors original equipment. Got it here. It looked exactly like the one that's on the pickup. We installed it and everything works fine except my thermometer that tells me the outside temperature is off 5 to 7 degrees.
Yeah, and you said this is the passenger mirror, right?
How I can get that correct?
Yeah, you're not. It's
Can't you zero it out?
No, it's a faulty. It's just poor. The way that the temperature is read, there's a thermistor, which is just a thermal resistor inside of that mirror, and that resistor needs to report the correct resistance to that temp control module in order for it to give you the correct temperature. If this is like a Chinese mirror or something,
he said it was an OEM original mirror that he thinks he got.
You think so?
Yeah. I'm by what he said, you seem confident. Was there a GM part number on it?
Yes, we gave him the General Motors part number on.
On what you bought.
Yeah, if you on the part you bought, if you roll back the foamy pad that's where you bolt it to the door.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a General Motors tag on the part? Is there a General Motors part number on the part? Did you look at it that close?
No, I guess I did not.
Yeah, because you could have ordered it by the GM number. They say, oh yeah, here, because I can go to Amazon and it'll say,
it's very confusing.
Here's a part, and this is the OE. Or if I go to O'Reilly Auto Parts, it'll say OE number. So I click on it, but it's an aftermarket version of that. So I believe that the resistance is wrong. And the only way to test that for sure is if you took the mirror off, unplugged it, hooked your multimeter up to it to measure resistance, and you knew, the outside temperature. You got a thermometer sitting next to it. It's 70 degrees. My resistance should be 400 ohms. You look at that and say, oh, that's not correct. That's the problem.
How does he know what that resistance is supposed to be?
There's a chart.
Oh.
In the factory service manual, there's a chart that says at this temperature, this is the resistance.
The easier thing to do then, if he knew the wiring diagram, would be to take his broken mirror and see what the resistance is on that.
Just compare them. Set them both on the ground. Now, taking a mirror apart, some come apart, some don't.
Well, he'd have to get the wiring diagram to know what pin to poke into.
Mark,
we're getting way off in the weeds here for Mark here.
Mark, may I act as your accomplice here, as your proxy?
Because the hosts are wild this morning.
Yeah. I'm gonna speak for you a little bit. You correct me if I'm wrong. Is there an easy way for him to fix it? No.
Maybe, because I've got those mirrors on my truck.
Right. You're talking about resistance, wiring diagram,
to fit.
Disassembling. It's 7 degrees
No, it's
off.
not easy. You can get a different one. But if you can get it apart, well, just calculate. Put a chart up there on the thing like I have on my train.
Russ, you're going deeper down the hole. Yeah. Chris, you're right. No, he can't fix it.
Does that help you out there, Mark?
No, but Mark, in all seriousness, we're having a little bit of fun here at your expense. But if that is a factory original GM mirror, it is very unusual for that not to work.
It's hot glued to the inside of the unit, and I've had mine apart because I changed the bases to fit my old doors on my 96. So I've got his mirror on my truck, basically. So inside, I can see where the two green wires come up. Oh, they're green. Anyways, and I could pop that off and change the resistor. I could put the old one back in it.
Or he might be able to return it because it's not working correctly if it is a factory original mirror, unless it was somebody's.
Yeah. And the other thing you could do, here you go. You already got the broken mirror off. Take the resistor out of it, extend the wires, put it up behind the grill in the front, and then run the wires inside and connect them to that door.
Still no.
Yeah, still no.
Oh, come on.
Mark, I know the industry just from selling parts. And did you order that from like a dealer or from like a parts supplier that had other parts available, surplus items, that sort of thing? Do you know who the vendor was?
I believe it was original GM warehouse.
Because what you'll get sometimes what you'll get is people that have stores that put on a good front that they have new OEM items, and then they'll be representing them as best they can that way, but they're not, and sometimes they're factory seconds or they're surplus, because we do get some of that stuff ourselves. And you sometimes wonder why you have something because it looks perfect. And if it is an original equipment item, you have to find out sometimes the hard way that there's a problem that is like this.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no calibration is the point, Russ. Is that right?
Right.
You can't plug in your scanner and recalibrate it or anything.
If you can still send it back, send it back.
That's what I mean. So if
they're a little more,
if they're a reputable company, just tell them, here's my problem. Do you have another one that I can try?
Get on the phone with them. You'll find out how reputable they are probably by,
just trying to communicate.
Yes.
Mark, thanks very much for the call. The answer to your question is no. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Josh. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Josh, what can we do for you?
Hey, guys. This is Josh. I'm president of the Sioux Falls SCCS. We're the Autocross club here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota region.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Heard you guys talking about the ordinance change. We had to go through this week. Just kind of wanted to call in and talk to you guys about it.
Well, Josh, thanks for calling in. Can you look at this from a national viewpoint? Because yes, we got talking about street racing and other things like that, which is really which is really not related to what happened for the club and for other clubs around the country, making sure they can get the legal precedent to hold these 100% wonderful quality events.
How could more people do this across the country? That's what we were trying to get at locally. How could they get into a club like you guys have, and how do they approach their cities in getting one organized like that? Because we've got this, I get so many emails from across the country. They're like, well, we'd like to have something like that. We've heard you guys talk about it. And
so,
how do we even
so
start?
much of this discussion has gotten out of the purview of autocross events like you're talking about, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, the narrative is street outlaws, right? I mean, after street outlaws became big, the street racing stuff really became a lot bigger. And the public view of people that aren't big car people is people going 200 miles an hour down a road, or these guys on the weekends that are out just blazing down highways or city streets.
Yep.
To answer your question, to get something local, the big organizing bodies are SCCA and NASA. A lot of regions will have local clubs within those sanctioning bodies for you to come out and do autocross.
And autocross, we're talking about taking a giant parking lot, making a track out of the parking lot, just in that surface of the parking lot, and getting vehicles in that are safety
and doing a timed event. You're not racing against each other on the track. You're racing against each other for your skill level to be able to pilot the car, prepare the car, figure out which combinations work best on that vehicle. That's what we're talking about with autocross, correct? We're hitting that right on the head, I would think, Josh?
Yeah. Autocross is one of the absolute most safe grassroots forms of motorsports you can get into, and you can get into it at a young age at a low cost. We have anywhere from McLarens to Honda Civics that come out in autocross. We've even had a few people now that we're on more of a main road that have just drove by and seen what we're doing, stop the next day and say, hey, this looks really fun. Can we do this? And as long as you have a safe, well-maintained car, you can autocross.
Josh, what are some of the venues that you guys are going to be looking at in our local area going forward?
So like you talked, autocross, the best way to run autocross is getting the largest parking lot you can get with as few of obstructions as possible, right? So the biggest problem you run into now trying to find venues is city, ordinances to where you have to have boulevards and light poles and all this stuff. So some of those venues are getting more and more difficult to find. A lot of them are private. You have to work with the company that owns the property in order to hold the event. Sometimes there's city restrictions that don't allow you to do them. But, you have these large lots. You use cones and timing equipment. Like you said, it's one car on course at a time. You just are running through the car or in the course in a little sprint race. You get a time, and the competition is all based off time and classes based on the type of car you have.
When I came out and participated here, it's been 3-4 years ago now, with my daughter. It was at the fairgrounds parking lot at the time, and you guys had a great course set up. We had a wonderful fun day, and I said to myself, I'm going to do this again someday, and I never have. But I was extremely impressed with the event that you ran, the organization of it. You guys had the trailer there for helmets if people needed them. That's cool. You had everything set up to make it a great day. And what I noticed out there were the families, the number of families that were out there together, just having a great time and all watching to see what's that little Miata going to do? What's that hot rod McLaren going to do? And then I watched these guys like, what is it you campaign again? What do you have again?
So I used to have a C6 Z06 Corvette. That very high horsepower, very fast, race suspension, everything. I have now transitioned over to a Subaru BRZ just due to cost of consumables. Obviously tires are much cheaper, brakes are much cheaper, things like that. So
I enjoyed watching the little Subarus
there's
and Miatas and some of those cars that were really set up just fly around the track. It was a lot of fun. Well, Josh, thanks for calling in and giving people a perspective of what they could look at and who they should contact for a sanctioning body if they want to set up something like this in their community.
Yeah. How do we get a hold of your club, Josh?
So the best way of getting a hold of our club is through Facebook. We are SCCS. That's the abbreviation for it. It's Sports Car Club of Siouxland. Facebook is our main avenue. We do have a website, but the Facebook page is the main spot.
And if they reached out to you there, you could connect them to the national folks to be able to do something in their own community too.
100%. We're willing to help.
Cool, Josh. Thanks very much for the call. Yeah, that's a good call there to kind of explain what we're talking about. Maybe not the ordinance.
There's a whole nother
Yes.
subject out there that we did talk
Yes.
about earlier, but this is something different.
Josh, thanks very much for the call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Don't forget, you can watch the show on our YouTube channel, and if you subscribe there and join the Hoodie Fan Club at UnderTheHoodShow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Kelly Runyon, congratulations from all of us here at Under the Hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu, and Berkeley One Classic, celebrating 50 years of collector car insurance. UTI, Universal Technical Institute. I just talked to somebody the other day that partners with them, and they were talking about how nice their campuses are, and they happen to have one where they were at, but they're all over the country now, so you can get trained in automotive repair, marine mechanics, welding, CNC machining. You can even get into NASCAR Technical Institute. That's a possibility as well, so you can check them out. Find out more than we can tell you here at the show at UTI.edu.
I wonder when UTI is going to have like an elective, or maybe just the students at UTI start like a club
Sewing.
where they go learn to work on old cars. So when Skynet takes down all of the electronics, you know what I mean?
Hence our previous conversation on the
Steam
break.
engines.
Yeah,
Steam
they're
engines.
they're going to go, hey guys, we're learning all the latest tech at school, but on Tuesday nights, we work on Stanley steamers and the original Benz motor. So if you want to come learn how to get that going, we're just doing a fun little
Points
thing.
and condensers.
Exactly.
I can't believe how many people call me, Chris, and ask, what's the best car for a prepper car? I get, 6 or 7 of these calls a year.
Uh-huh.
It's like, say what? And most of them, though, they don't do it right. They're like, well, I thought I'd pick like a 1990 Honda Accord. I'm like,
Wednesday night,
Nope.
we're working with mules and horses just to totally make sure
there
we're
you go.
covered.
I'm going to tell them that. Say,
get a mule.
horse,
Yeah, get some oxen.
a donkey.
Yep.
We had a very good
A
friend.
llama.
We had a
Llama,
very
llama,
good
llama.
friend of ours that took some extreme measures to make sure he
He
had
brought
a
it
place.
to my shop.
Yep, and he had a particular vehicle he bought that was points and condenser. He wanted to make sure it would run.
He had
and-
me change it. It was electronic, and he had me put a point distributor in it.
and
And it had a manual transmission, so he could push start it.
Yep, we loved him. Great friend of ours, and he ended up dying of a heart attack before he had to worry about any of it because he probably got himself too worried about what was going to happen.
That's the way to go. I mean, if you're preparing for that, I think you want it to come about a little bit.
I think you.
A
I think
little
there's
bit.
a sick piece of you that would want it to come about so you could prove that you were ready
Yeah.
and nobody else was.
Don't want to feel like you wasted all that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
and
So
money.
wouldn't there be a
There's
something there?
A little bit. Yeah. 866-594-4150. This is the weirdest Under the Hood show.
You realize there'd be no under
In
the hood if
quite
the end
some
came.
time.
Yeah, we came in hot and wild, and it just hasn't changed.
It's the weather.
I think it is.
Let's
It
go.
is.
Let's go to Nebraska and talk to Jim. You're on the Under the Hood show. Jim, what can we do for you?
Well, I just wanted to thank you. I forget which one of you talked about your son-in-law was getting car insurance.
Yep. That
and
was
he was going to get the minimum
I
insurance.
think my son-in-law has car insurance.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not sure.
that was me. I just talked to him last night again, actually.
And anyway, that got me thinking, and I looked at mine, and I was at the minimum. And I got thinking, if you have an accident, you can run through $100,000 and nothing flat.
Well, I see you're calling from Nebraska, and you're in the same part of the world we are, and every region's got different reasons to look at this. If you're out there where there's somebody just got a new farm truck, that's a big diesel farm truck, that's $100,000 truck anymore. And if you happen to be the one that meets them at an intersection and totals their truck out, you got to pay for it. And if you're in a very affluent area and there's sports cars running all around you that cost $250,000,
depending on your state. Yeah. Some places you would not be responsible for
depending
it
on the way the insurance is set up.
Yeah.
If it's no fault or whatever. But regardless, you need that ability to take care of that loss. And I started off giving that presentation for driver's ed students, and that was one of the things that we talked about was insurance. And I would try to explain it to them in that way, that you need to be prepared for what's around you and understand that. And in this world where you're watching the commercials on TV for car insurance like it is a commodity, Limo Emu and Flo and everybody else, the Lizard.
And Doug.
Yeah, they're all out there. They're competing. And so I think a lot of times people start in their mind thinking, I'm going to get the best price. And they do lose track of what they're actually paying for. And so it's important to scroll through that coverage and say, all right, if I am a state that I'm responsible for somebody else's accident, how much more does it cost me to go from $75,000 of liability insurance to $250,000 of liability
what
insurance?
If I cross a border every single day on my way?
Oh,
to
I
work?
bet your thought is you go from a fault state to a no fault state,
right? Yeah,
and so it's very important that you ask those questions. Jim, I'm glad you recognize that. So, how much difference in premium did you have to pay to upgrade
it was less than $50?
Yeah, for how big of a change did you make?
Well, this was on the medical side.
Okay, which is huge too. Yeah,
because I went from 150 to 500.
Yep, that's a big deal because anymore you go into the hospital emergency room visit with some decent complications from an accident, you're going to blow through $100,000 before you
or if there's
blink.
4 people in the car.
Exactly. So that's great that you recognize that, and we're glad we're able to give some of that thought to at least get people thinking about it.
I can remember being.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Thank you for calling too. That's what we hope.
I can
That's
remember
what we
being
hope
young.
our shows do.
Did you guys, when you were like super young, say, what's the cheapest I can get it for? I remember making that call.
Yeah.
I was like 20. I just need insurance. I'll get the cheapest I can. Okay.
Exactly. I had successfully put myself in a position where my parents said I had to get my own insurance
And tires.
because I was not helping their policy at all
Right.
with things that happened, and nothing horrible, but it was just frequency of events. And so I had to go out and get my own insurance, and that was my goodness, I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid. How do I pay for this? What's it going to cost? And you do ask, what's the cheapest I can get to meet the state minimum so I can have the certificate in my vehicle? And that's scary.
The first
It was a lot.
car I bought, my insurance payment, I bought a brand new vehicle. My insurance at my age was more by $4 than my car payment.
Oh boy.
And that was that was one where I went, what? Wait a second. I didn't plan for this. And that was it. I just didn't plan for it. So that's a big part of it. And getting the cheapest, especially if you have a loan, the cheapest isn't that cheap. So
I do remember paying the first car I ever got insurance on that I had to pay for. It was $38 a month. And I thought that seemed like a lot of money. And it was a lot of money back then, but I was like, $38. That's so much money.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Bill. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Bill, what can we do for you?
Good morning. I've got a 2012 Chevy Silverado. It's got a 6-cylinder in it, 2-wheel drive. and I'm having an issue with the temperature gauge. What happens is usually in the warmer weather, I'll be driving it and then it'll trip and the temperature gauge will go to 0. And then I get a message on my dash that engine is hot, air conditioning turned off. And that happens on a regular basis. Sometimes it'll happen twice in a day. Sometimes it'll go 2 weeks. And what I've been doing with it is when that does happen, I'll pop the hood, take the negative cable off, it'll reset, put the cable back on, and I'm good for a while.
How long has it been doing this?
It's actually been doing it. It started doing it probably about 2 years ago. And my first thought was that it was the sensor itself on the engine. So I changed that out and it hasn't changed anything. And one thing I did notice is when it does do it, I've noticed that when I'm under the hood, that the positive cable is a little warmer than it should be.
That is something that I have not heard anybody say for a while.
If there's increased engine temperatures, everything's going to be hotter. Anything plastic's going to be hotter. But you need to take a real heat gun and point it at the engine, see what the temperature is of the engine itself at that water outlet where the thermostat is. Find out what the actual temperature is to see if it's actually gone up. Those things are cheap. I think you can pick them up at a pharmacy even now or Home Depot or wherever, probably $30, $40 for a good one. And find out what that actual temperature is, because if it's not increasing, if it's still in the normal range, then you've got a problem with the temperature sending unit. We have replaced a number of the pigtails and the sensors on vehicles for this problem. GM vehicles are real bad about it. A few of the Fords, but mostly the GMs, they just go bad, and they'll just all of a sudden and they fail quickly once they get to a certain point. Like you'll get up to, let's say, 220, and 220 to 224 could be pretty normal for a hot day in traffic around town, but at 220, you're okay, but when you hit like 222, all of a sudden that thermistor goes, and it grounds out, and it just goes to full hot. And then the fans come on, the light comes on, it says stop engine, AC off. So it just fails quickly once it gets to a certain level. But below that, it's fine. So that could be what's going on with it. And the pigtails are cheap, the sensors are cheap. You might just think about getting that whole thing.
But if you find out
change them both out.
Yeah, if you find out though that your temperature is remaining consistent, but the gauge is doing crazy stuff, it could be a problem with the cluster.
And you
check with like an O'Reilly Auto Parts. The standard motor products carries a long line of those pigtails, sensors, and all electronic parts. But if you get one, always make sure they match. Don't, if they say, well, I've got one from this brand and I got one from that brand. No, same brand, and Standard makes some really good quality ones. So get the both together, the sensor and the pigtail. You'll thank yourself for having ones that all match.
Bill, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Rod in Minnesota. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Rod, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I have a question first about my tires, my 2013 Honda Ridgeline. I'm wintering down in southern Texas this winter, and I had one tire go bad, and it's an all-wheel drive. My spare is a different tire, and it's got about 6,000 more tread depth than the other side. Is that okay to drive home with that, or is that not a good idea?
How much?
My car's back in Minnesota.
Yeah, how far off is it?
You said it has 630 seconds more than the other ones?
Yeah, the one on the front. It happened on the rear. Yeah, the one side has 630 seconds more than the other side.
No, I wouldn't do it.
Can I put two used ones on the back that are about the same depth, even if they're a different brand? Would that be bad? Okay.
Only if they match the front 100%.
What is the as people drive these, they will wear down tires if they don't rotate. Is it how many 30 seconds do they say in manuals is acceptable?
None. They don't like any more than about one.
But the reality, though, Russ, is there's people out there running around all over the place that have got tires that are not matching. And
30 seconds is going to give you excessive wear on the parts.
Yeah, it's
pretty quickly. And I've had some people come in with as little as 30 seconds, like on a Trailblazer, and they're kind of jerking and they're hard to turn in the parking lot, like it's your tires.
And is it the depth of not the depth of the tread that he's worried about? It's the entire.
Yeah, you want to roll that tire over and look at the entire rolling radius, put it next to the other one. Maybe perchance with a different tire brand, it actually sizes up pretty similar.
And the easy way to find out, if you've already got them on your vehicle and you're wondering if there's a problem, get yourself a piece of chalk and mark a straight line right down the center of the tire on all 4 tires on the outside, and then take that vehicle and drive it 100% straight, either forward or backwards, about 50 feet, and then stop. When that line lines up with the ground, just pick one tire and line it up, and then look at the rest of them. If they're all lined up, you're good. If they're 4 or 5 inches away, you're not good, because in a mile, that turns into several revolutions, and you have 2 things that are supposed to be working together, and they're trying to push apart. So they're grinding on something.
Because the viscous coupling or the electronics will sense some of that as wheel spin. And thinking that it's not matched, and so they try to compensate for it. Now, I don't want to overly scare you about this, but it's a reality. But I know of many people that have had an emergency. They've had to get a tire on. They've driven home from 100 miles away. But you're going across the country, correct?
Yeah.
You might find a used tire.
Yeah. That's what I would think would be the best, is try to find a used tire at a tire shop somewhere that would match up more similarly to what you have. Maybe when you roll yours up, roll yours up there, you're going to find out that it's very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, Russ, what brand would you recommend for I just want a good all-season tire on this Ridgeline if I was going to buy some down here.
Where are you at in Texas?
Here's a
Mission.
Mission?
Probably.
Yeah, you should be able to find Continental down there. That would be a pretty good one you could get in an all-season. I think on a Ridgeline, the BF Goodrich they're everywhere down there. You could get that. That would be a good all-season tire. There's a number of them you can get, but I'm just thinking what I see on a lot of those Ridgelines. But, you should be fine. The only thing, and I don't think the bigger question is, what are you going to find down there that you won't find if you come up here and need to replace a tire? Stay away from some of the really cheap bargain ones that have some odd names, because sometimes you'll get like I think Grand Am made tires down there, and I don't even know if you can get those in this part of the country any longer, and I think they're still available down there. There's some like that if it's an off brand that you've never heard of, you want to be careful, because if you have to come up here and replace a tire, let's say they're brand new, but you lose a tire when you get up to Minnesota, you're out of luck, because you can't get that tire anymore. You'd have to order it from down there to get the same. And now that tread pattern might be the same, and the circumference and diameter and all these might be the same on 10 different tires, but they have a different number on the side. They have a different branding on the side. But they can have different tread wear because they can have a softer compound. So you got to look at all those things. Name brand would be the way to go. Continental, BF Goodrich, Goodyear.
This question,
Toyo,
Rod's question is one of the biggest issues. It's a big headache for people.
A lot of folks have no idea that when they have an all-wheel drive vehicle, how crucial it is. And we first ran into this when I was young in the parts business, and we were selling a remanufactured transfer case. And we had one customer that had 3 of them go bad. And on the 3rd one, the vendor said, no more. Let's check this. There's something wrong here. And so the customer said, there's nothing wrong. And so I think we got them somewhere and had them do a test, and their tires were off a bunch. And they were tearing up parts. It was breaking the transfer cases.
Can Rod just bring it into a tire shop, a reputable tire shop, and they'll be able to go, okay, here's what you need. We have it, or we don't, or we can find it here.
Yeah, and they might have something used, or they may just suggest, we'll get you a set of new tires. Now, you can always, if you don't want to lose all that money and your tires are still, if you think you've still got some good ones, you could save 2 of them off your vehicle because somebody will want those tires. Somebody will be looking. But if they're
all 3, somebody will buy it for a pair and have a spare.
If they're worn down, though, if they're really worn, then they're probably just scrap anyways if they've only got like 4 30-seconds on them. But if they've still got some with 7 30-seconds, 8 30-seconds, that's a good used tire.
Rod, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Let's go to Texas and talk to Dewana. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dewana, what can we do for you?
Hey, guys. I'm calling about my 2011 Dodge Charger, which is my baby, and I love her. And I am not kidding, I'm the only owner. She has 277,000 miles estimated on her. In the last 3 years, I've noticed that I've had to make some pretty major repairs. Like, for instance, I have 2 fuel pumps. I had to change those out. I had to do the rear differential, and I had to also change out what is it called? The oil cooler, like literally just recently. So my question to you guys is, I want to keep her around as long as possible. At this juncture, what would you guys recommend me do to help prolong her life? And if this helps, I get oil changes probably every month and a half, only because sometimes like in a week, I could drive 1,000 miles. So I use full synthetic. And let's see. And then obviously I get my tires rotated probably every, like 8,000 miles, something like that.
Okay.
So what would you guys recommend?
Where are you at in Texas?
I am in Abilene.
Oh, Abilene.
Central.
Okay. All right. So climate, that has a lot to do. A lot of friends in a lot of different areas down there, and the climate makes a big difference. So where you're at, this engine is going to be a lot safer than where we're at here.
I'm assuming it's a 3.6 liter because you said the oil cooler was leaking.
Yeah, on top.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Much safer down there in a steadier climate than we have with the sub-zero temperatures. We see a lot more problems with the oil coolers, but now they're happening all over the place. And they're not. So Dorman Products has upgraded their engine oil cooler by changing the seals, doing a lot of upgrades to that because those factory ones were kind of junk. They are junk. You see them all the time. So you've done that. That's good. That's going to prevent the oil from leaking over and getting onto other things and rotting things out. That's good there. Where you're at, you're changing the oil regularly. That's super important on these engines for longevity.
The cam area with the synthetics and changing that oil, you're just hitting it right on the head with what you should
and
do.
you're rotating the tires. I think you're doing a good thing. If you haven't done the coolant, I would do the coolant about every 80,000 miles on that car. Flush it out just to keep things from becoming acidic and eating head gaskets and things. But other than that, those cars are really tough. It sounds like you've been doing a good job with it. I'd hit that transmission service at about 80,000 miles on it. Other than that, I think you're good. I think you're keeping it right up.
They
Keep
use
that baby going.
They use those cars as squad cars. The chassis are strong. I think that you've got a car that will last a long time. 277,000 miles on a 3.6 liter is a lot, but we see them in minivans all the time with 400 to 500,000 miles on them from one of our customers.
Yeah.
And then they put another motor. Then they put another motor in them.
Mm-hmm. All right, awesome. So I will definitely add coolant and transmission flush to my checklist.
Dewana, I have to ask you a question going before we end the show here. You said she. You've said her. The car has a name, doesn't it?
Honestly, I have not given her a name, but oh my gosh, like when I get in, it's like, hey babe, how you doing?
I thought for sure there'd be a name. I thought for sure there'd be a name right away.
No. I know there should be, like, after all this time, we've been together for so long, but it's just I feel like if I take care of it, it's gonna take care of me. So far, that's been proven. And so
Call it Hoodie.
I just wanted to be
For the End of the Hood Show.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call, Dewana.
Okay, guys. Bye-bye.
See ya.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us. Under the Hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter, here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What has caught your attention in the automotive world?
All the new cars. I'm still seeing new cars on the road with names. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Who makes it?
Looks like a vibe.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they do.
The cars, and so many I'm seeing, and the first thought is, what pops into your head? Oh, that's a Dodge. That's a Hyundai. Oh, that's a That's a Ford. What? It's like, yeah, I'm going to imitate this car because it was a good sale. And
I think we've talked about this forever. There's a time when they all catch up and they start to look the same, and then it'll change a little, and then they'll all look like another thing. We saw that back in the day. I still to this day I can picture my friend Timmy's car perfectly. I can picture it 100%, but I can't tell you what it was because they all looked like that back then. We used to call his car because it looked like a drawing of a car.
Like it was Ford like Fairmont or something. They all look the same.
It was like a LeSabre or a Caprice. I mean, it was just the square body
was
style.
Was it a Chrysler Fifth Avenue, a Fairmont, a Granada?
Yeah, I have no idea because it just looked generic, and that just happens every few years. They catch up and don't stand out, I think.
I don't know. There's so many cars. Another one that's really fun is looking at all the Chinese knockoffs. Like the YouTube where there's like, we bought a Range Rover, but it's got a different name, or sometimes the same. It was a Ram. It was like, buy a Ram truck from China on Temu, and it's a Ram truck, and it has the same grill, but boy, it is not the same truck.
Our longtime salesman, Charlie, just got back from going to the Gator Nationals NHRA drag racing event down in Florida. And it was fun, Charlie said. He'd never been to anything like that in his life, and he's got a friend that had some pretty good access, and just incredible experience for him. I have done that once up at Brainerd with a friend of mine that took me because I was never a drag racing guy like that, but just an amazing experience if you ever get a chance to go to a top-end drag race. It's just crazy. But he said in Florida, he noticed, and he's like, what are these cars? And then they finally looked it up and figured it out, and Chinese manufactured electric car called VinFast.
Yeah. Vietnam.
Yep.
And
VinFast. Thank you, Vietnam.
Yep.
And they have had a number of those driving around he saw, and he had to look up what it was because he's like, what is this thing? And Charlie knows his vehicles. He knows his vehicles. And he's like, I've never seen this before. And so he had sent me some pictures of that. And then he saw the electric Challenger, I think it was, that they had there, or Charger. They had one of those down at the event. And so he saw some really cool stuff on his journey.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Josh. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Josh, what can we do for you?
Yeah, hey guys. I was going to say, I'm finally glad that the weather's warming up. So you know what that means. We got to start maintaining our vehicles.
Right.
So, no, I mean, my question is I've got a 2000 Ford Expedition. My wife and we bought that brand new, and I think it only had 10 miles on it. And I got to finally replace the CV shafts after 293,000 miles.
Wow.
And I was wondering if I have to undo, or I was just kind of wondering if I could get away with undoing the upper ball joint so that shackle comes down far enough for me to pull it out of there.
That's what we usually do, and you got to do some prying as well.
Yeah.
When you take that off of there, but some cars just won't work. You take the top off and you can get it almost, but you're still a half inch too short even if you pry, and you don't want to pry on the lower ball joint and damage something, or pry on an ABS wire or something. You got to be careful. You got to unplug those. But if you can't get it off, then you have to take the lower one loose too to pull it out. But yeah, there's different ways, but that's the way we typically do it. We take one of the joints loose and move it out.
And then too, I was going to ask too, Dorman, they sell a complete control arm kit, and the upper and lower ball joints, they're not real bad, but I mean, they're only like $170 for both of them. Should I just go ahead and replace the whole thing while I'm in there anyway?
Yeah, Dorman Products makes a lot of pre-pressed ball joints and things like that, so you can take the whole arm off and replace it. It makes it much easier just to pull the two bottom bolts out instead of trying to, you'd have to get a press and all that to put it in, and then is it safe? Did I get it all the way in? Did I get the clip all the way in? I don't know. So that Dorman Products assembly is a good way to go, and with that many miles, I can guarantee there's got to be some wear on it. Both those joints are probably worn, so Dorman Products would be a good solution for that replacement on that.
How many miles did you say you have on the Expedition now?
It's got 293,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of miles. That's awesome. And
it's the original engine, and this is the second transmission that I've had in it. So.
And when you said what you had, Chris and I both looked at each other, and I think Russ was thinking it. Is this a 2000 Ford Expedition or a 2004 Ford Expedition?
It's the 2000 Ford Expedition. It's the Eddie Bauer edition, four-wheel drive.
That's
a trap for parts.
Yeah,
people.
Yeah.
It's a 2000 Ford Expedition.
I was almost going to say, is it relevant?
I had to ask.
Yeah.
I needed to know.
At this point,
the answer to the question on the ball joint.
Yes, because if it's a 2000 and this has this many miles, we're not so worried about the engine failing in it.
Yep.
At this many miles. If it's an 04 with this many miles, don't worry about putting ball joints in it. Save for your motor. It's gonna need
293. It's amazing if it was an 04.
Yeah. There you go, Josh. Thanks very much for the call. Good luck. So yeah, that's one where you would just do it now while you got it. One of those things where while you got it open, go ahead and
it'll save you some time.
Yeah. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to Arizona and talk to Neil. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Neil, what can we do for you?
Morning, guys.
Hey.
I'm calling to see which one you guys prefer the older cars as far as working on to see what are parts compatible with the others.
Well,
you mean like a 2016 or 17 or an 83, 84?
I'm talking late 50s, 60s, 70s cars are like parts are interchangeable. The motors are interchangeable.
Well,
something easier you can order.
You would be surprised how many parts interchange between cars even now. So as far as a whole engine goes and most parts on an engine, if I pull a 3.6 Pentastar engine from a Chrysler, it's, let's say, a 2012, it's going to fit a ton of stuff. Minivan, some of the full size vans, some of the not the Sprint, but
ProMasters.
ProMaster van, the CV. It'll fit the car, the Charger, the
They made a world engine
yeah.
to put in a lot of different vehicles.
It'll fit a lot of things. The 5.7 Hemi fits a number of vehicles. The 1.5 and the 1.6, the Chevy engine and the Ford engines, they fit so many different vehicles. The 5.4 Ford engines. Now, if we're talking about chassis components, same thing. Wheel bearings interchange between so many different models on GMs, Ford, and Chryslers. There's a lot of things. Now, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, there were a lot of things like pretty much anything General Motors on a full-size car was the same as another General Motors full-size car, like a Delta 88 was the same as a Chevy Caprice and things like that. So, yeah, there are still a lot of interchangeabilities on those things. But now if we're talking a wiring harness on a Delta 88 was the same as a Caprice and a Buick.
Electra, LeSabre.
Yeah. They are not the same anymore. Within the same car, you may have 3 different underhood wiring harnesses for a Ford Escape that are all a 2022 with a 1.6 with all the same. They can just be different. And that drives us nuts trying to get that exact thing because there's different emissions levels and things. That really changes the thing there.
Neil, I think to kind of get to the heart of your question is there is a ton of interchangeability, like Russ just said, but the simplicity of interchanging is much easier on the older cars.
Yeah, finding out. Really hard.
You can look at under the hood of an old Chrysler or an old GM or an old Ford and say, "Oh, it's got that one," and you could just see it, and you knew that you could pick it out of that one and put it in the other one, and maybe change a carburetor, and away you go.
However, sitting in real terms. You sitting in front of your computer now, trying to find a part for a car, are you going to have an easier time with a 2020 or a 2017 versus a 78?
I want to make sure I answer that question properly. If I was sitting in my computer that we first got in 1994
yeah.
for interchangeability, and I looked, I do think that I had a longer year interchange of what would fit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Of availability and relevancy compared to today, because it is
95 only.
Is much tighter on the
2012 only
on the interchange because of certain intricacies. While they can be changed, some people don't want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I would have to say that the interchangeability, the further back you went, had a longer span for sure.
Mm-hmm. But now. More stuff it's harder to go to an interchange on the computer and sometimes find a part, just any part from 50 years ago, because when we're talking about 1975, we're talking about 50-year-old cars. So there's also the availability.
We still have the interchange, but we don't have the availability.
Right, yeah. So it's kind of a lot of nuance to that question, Neil. Thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Don. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Don, what can we do for you?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, Don.
I'm excited about the city council passing our ordinance so us Pinto owners don't get in trouble.
Hey, been a while since we've heard from you, Don.
Hot Rod Pinto.
Yeah, good to hear from you.
Hell yeah. The heads are off getting ported and polished, so be ready.
Well, you need that because it was getting slow, I heard.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's because you can go to the dealership and buy a car that'll walk all over it right off the showroom floor. So
crazy anymore.
2009 Ford Escape steering angle sensor. Replaced one in my daughter's car. I'm pretty impressed. I think a mechanic must have designed the application to that and not an engineer. It's actually pretty nice to get to. But anyways, I started it. Everything was fine. Drove it around the block. Brought it in the garage. Tear up a tire. Turn it back on, and nothing. Now I've heard rumors it has to be flashed or recalibrated or.
Nothing.
Are you there?
Hello?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
So you drove it, you turned it off, and now it
Hello?
won't restart?
Are you Don? Can you hear us?
No,
Okay, hold on. Let's
I
start
can hear
over.
you.
Okay, now we ask that question again, Russ.
So you drove it, you turned it off, and now it won't restart?
No, the power steering doesn't work. Or
Oh, the power
is
steering
fixed.
doesn't work. Yeah, you may need to recalibrate that to see see if that fixes it. Typically, with the electric power steering, it's the sensors built into the rack. I haven't had to do one on this model vehicle, so apparently it's not in the rack because all the from
No,
what
it's in the column.
it's in the column. Okay. And you're sure that okay? Yeah. Well, yeah, it must be because I've seen so many of
here's
them
what
that are
happened.
separate.
Yeah, what was your symptoms and how did you get where you're at now? Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
maybe.
So my daughter was driving it, and it would be intermittent. It would work, then it would quit, and if you turned it off and started it, then it would work again and then quit. And so I did a little research. It pointed all towards that steering angle sensor, so I got one, put it in. Like I said, got everything lined up, started the vehicle up, drove it around. Steering was working great. Pulled it in the garage, turned it off. When I turned it back on, it didn't work at all. So then what I did was I unhooked the battery, let it sit for a while, put the battery back on, started it. It worked for about 2 revolutions, then quit. So it's acting like, hey, I don't recognize you.
Do you still have a steering angle sensor code?
I've never had it plugged in as far as the code.
You need to do
I
that.
never did that. It went bad. I replaced it. It was working until I turned it off. And so from what I'm gathering, and it sounds like I need to have it recalibrated
No,
or whatever.
I would have checked the codes before you replace this because I still think there's a steering angle sensor within the rack, even though you may have something on the column separate. If it was intermittent before, it's still intermittent now. You're still having a problem, or even if it's completely failed, you're still having the intermittent problem. I would have wanted to know before and after change.
We have a employee that worked for us for a while, and she still helps out part-time. She had a problem with an escape rack and pinion, and it ended up being quite problematic for her because it would come and go, and that ended up being a wiring issue.
Yep.
Wasn't it, Russ?
Yep. It was a wiring issue where it went up to the fuse box where the power steering wire bolts on, and that wire was corroded there at the fuse box. And we cleaned it, took it apart, cleaned it up, put it back on. It was fine after that.
Because she was having intermittent power steering come and go.
Yep.
And they were, I think, $1,300 rack and pinions had been put in it.
Yep. And those racks did have internal sensors. They did
If
not
that
have,
is the same year range
Yeah.
setup, I think it is on that setup.
Like 7 to 12.
Yeah, it's that same.
hers is a 9.
It's the same
Yeah.
setup. And so I would be concerned that what you replaced might have been fine to replace, but it isn't the root of the problem.
I'd check the power. I'd get yourself a voltmeter down there at the rack and look at it, both power and ground connected right to that rack motor. And when you got the car running, look and you got to observe that it's got the right power. Also, if you plug a scanner into it, you're going to be able to read the power steering control module, and it's going to tell you if it has correct voltage to it or not.
Don, good luck. Thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. It must be interesting, is the way I'll phrase it, to have a problem like that and work here. Because there are a lot of people that work here that know a lot about cars. There are a lot of people that work here that know a lot about their specific cars, just like normal, but there's also...
There's a lot of people like me that know a lot about parts, but don't know how to put it all together.
Right. And I bet if you have an intermittent problem, there's a lot of resources here that want you to be able to fix it and also are going to...
What happens sometimes is we'll have some people and say, "Nope, I hear about that all the time. You're going down the wrong road. It's this."
Yeah.
And like Russ said, nobody has plugged anything into it yet.
Uh-huh.
And so that is, we see that happen. I don't like to over exaggerate thing, but I don't know how many times, whether it's on private selling that I'm doing, I do some private selling on eBay, whether it is our own business here, whatever it might happen to be, the number of people that get excited and they're urgent, they want to find a part, they are overnight airing, I got to get it now. They're like breathing your air. They're so urgent to get this thing taken care of. You do a hero's effort to get the part to them. Anymore, I put disclaimers like with eBay stuff, say, hey, I will send this overnight, but I'm not refunding overnight freight if this isn't your problem.
Right.
And I would say that a higher than 50% of the time that they get back to me, oh, that wasn't the problem.
Wasn't it?
But they had heard that they needed this part, and they were on a vision quest.
They come to me, Shannon,
to
and
find
say,
that part.
I need my X replaced. And
Shannon
I say,
sold me this part.
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. But
you're not far off.
And then they come in, and I go to look at it. I had one yesterday, and they said, I need a transmission. I took it to a shop in town, and they said, I need a trans, and they're so much overpriced compared to yours. And I'm like, well, I felt our price was pretty good. And I thought it was, yeah, whatever. They bring it to me, and I started up, and I went, tuk, 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 tuk. That's not a transmission. I was like, no, there's something else wrong. Maybe they got two things wrong. So I plugged the scanner in, and says the transmission looks good. Motor's missing. And I drive it down the road, and I'm like, it shifts good. You don't need a transmission. You need this. They're like, oh, great. What's that going to cost me? I said, about 10% of what the transmission would cost. Oh, really?
Oh, good.
Where did you figure this out? Well, they told me I needed it. I'm like, they did? Well, they said it could be, so I looked it up on the internet, and that's what the internet said it was.
And some people have a very hyper nature, and when you plug that into a crisis, it can lead to bad decisions.
Yeah.
And so
don't do it.
For sure.
Slow things down and go through a process.
Your guy told me this part would fix my car.
Slow things down.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Welcome back to the Under the Hood Show. Don't forget, you can watch our show on our YouTube channel. And if you subscribe to that and join the Hoodie Fan Club at UnderTheHoodShow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Jeff Randolph, congratulations from everybody here under the hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu, and Berkeley One Classic, celebrating 50 years of collector car insurance.
That's 1975. That doesn't seem
that long ago, does it? But it
50
was.
years seems like a long time. 1975 doesn't.
The older I get, those longer years don't seem that far away. You know, when I was 18, something that was 8 years old, I was like, wow, that's really old. But now when you're a little older than that, something that's 30 years old, oh, that's not old at all.
I just got that thing.
Yeah.
It's brand new practically. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Pennsylvania and talk to Don. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Don, what can we do for you?
Hey, guys. I have a question about a 2023 Subaru Impreza. Good friends of mine bought it brand new. The dealership told them oil changes every 10,000 miles. They have 19,000 miles on it right now. And the dealership said, no, you can't come in. You're not due for the oil change yet. I think this is a little bit absurd. I just want your opinion on this one for the oil changes.
Before Russ answers the detail of the question, I want to ask a kind of a intriguing, my mind is there. Are they trying to qualify for some sort of free oil changes that was a package with part of purchasing the car? Is that why it's an issue for them?
No, it's regular service intervals, they told them. They said the Subaru recommends every 10,000 miles. I said, no way.
Yeah, I'd say I don't care what they recommend.
Every week.
Change it every week. Drain and refill.
No.
That would do it. The first oil change, we say you got to go longer because most of them are putting in a non-synthetic break-in oil, and it's got to break the engine in.
Hold on.
First oil change.
Let me go back. Maybe. I mean, what you just said was pretty declarative and pretty concrete, which is not necessarily
a lot of
everyone, right?
But not everyone,
right? Okay.
So, if that's the case, if it's break-in oil, yeah, it's got to go longer to break it in. But then after that,
Yeah,
you want to change it. So if it's just regular standard oil in there, yeah, you want to change that. I'm never going that long, especially on a Subaru. They're pretty tough. Subarus have two problems. They have some oil system issues. If they let them go that long, yeah, they could have some timing components now that they've gone away from belts and back to chains. You're going to have that clatter on startup, and a lot of that can be prevented with good oil changes. The other thing is the buildup of the carbon on the backside of the valves, and those need to be taken care of, and there's multiple ways to do it. You can take a BG air intake system cleaner and run that system. Clean it out. It's introduced through the intake manifold to clean the back of the valves. You could use the system from Justice Brothers and introduce that through the air intake to clean the back of the valves, or you could use the system from CRC, their air intake system cleaner, and it goes again in through the intake and cleans the back of the valves. If you don't do this with time, it's going to start having some misfire issues, and this happens a lot on multiple manufacturers' direct injected engines. GM, I don't care who it is, they're going to have this problem. It needs to be cleaned. And the engine oil, Subaru, I'd be if they told me every 5,000 miles, I'd think, okay, that's reasonable for a manufacturer to say that. But 10, that's just seems so long.
And this car has got already 3 years in existence, probably from the time it was made. And so that oil's been in that crankcase, that first change, for quite a long time at the mileage rate they're driving it, because it's only got 19,000 miles on it now. And so I would have held in there for the first manufacturer's oil change based on recommendations of the service advisor at the Subaru store. And then I would have, after that, been on my own schedule
sooner
than that.
What dealership is saying no? If you want to do it more often, that's a weird.
Yeah, we're not asking for the name, but that's a rhetorical question.
Right, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
why would they do that? Why would any dealership do that? Because that's what they do.
But here's the thing. We've said this before, and we're not trying to bash. We're just being realistic about what we're seeing. The cost of ownership of a vehicle has become a selling point in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a manufacturer can tell the dealership when they go to their training, we have this vehicle set up on a 10,000 mile interval oil change. It's going to cut down the cost of ownership for your buyer this much. That's what the dealer is going to represent. But at the same token, people that are in the back room, in mechanics, that have seen the failures that happen over time with these longer intervals, for people that aren't driving the vehicles, this vehicle in particular, only 19,000 miles on a 23, they're making a lot of short trips. The vehicle's not getting up to operating temperature. If you were out on the highway every day, I'm jumping all over the place here, but if you were on the highway every day and this thing got heated up and drove 50 miles every day, I'd have a way different answer than this car with 19,000 actual miles on it.
Yes, and these people are older people, retired, and I was very concerned as why the dealership took advantage of them like that.
But it's weird though. They're telling them to come in less though. That's weird. And that's why the rhetorical question. But they're trying to give them a satisfactional experience. Say, no, you don't have to change. I'm sure that's what's going on.
Yeah. Also,
you don't have to change it. You're good.
You're right. Let's be fair to the dealership, this specific dealership, in that through no fault of Don or we are having a conversation fourth hand about a conversation that took place. You know what I mean?
Not knowing the rest of it. But
and it could be as easy as, you don't have to come in for another 1,000 miles. And you might take that different, unless we were in on that conversation, it's hard to judge. And that's, Don, that has nothing to do with even you or the couple or either. It's just one of those, that's a game of telephone, and it could be any number of things.
On the surface, 10,000 miles is too long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So the first oil change was 10,000, and they wrote return oil change sticker on the windshield at 20,000 miles.
We don't agree with it.
For the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say if it said 10, the second one I would have been like 13,000.
I get a sticker from Russ, who I trust implicitly, and I don't trust his sticker. You know
So
what I mean?
you just add 10,000 to it, right?
I go, well, he's just being too. Come on.
He's a mechanic.
Don, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. That's a difficult one, kind of. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Steve. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Steve, what can we do for you?
Hi. I've got a plug-in hybrid vehicle, and it's got solar panels on my house and a big battery charger and all that stuff. Anyways, I have found, I've only had it a year, but I found that during the summer in particular, I will go 3 or 4 months without putting any gas in or using any gas because I charge it frequently and run it on the batteries. Yep. Is that going to be a problem for this car or for the fuel?
Oh, good question. First of all, I thought you were just calling to brag, but okay, now
He was too.
Yeah,
he was bragging at the same time.
Let me start with this.
Yeah, he flexed solar panels on the house.
Yeah.
And the Prius. So we're having fun with Steve, but that's pretty neat. You're keeping your cost of owning the vehicle quite low compared to that last call we were just talking about. But the question remains the same on your gas engine. What do I got to worry about if this gas engine's not running as often?
Does it run at all? Is it running at all? Or are you in the...
No, it doesn't run at all most of the time during those time periods because I can check the remaining mileage in the tank.
Sure.
And that always stays the same during those time periods.
So here's the thing. If you're not running the engine at all, the oil's going to stay pretty good because you're not building up unburned hydrocarbons past those piston rings into the oil. It's going to stay pretty clean. You should be able to pull the dipstick out and look at it and go, oh, look, this still looks pretty clean. But if it's running for 3 or 4 minutes at a time and then shutting off, it's going to start building some stuff in there. But my guess is it may not be a plug-in. It's meant to not start and run at all. But you will have a problem with the fuel if it goes too long. So if you're getting a full charge on it and you're able to drive this, let's say 10 miles to work every day and never run that engine, and it's not cold enough that the electric heat has to run or the air conditioning has to run and make the engine start, it still has, more than 50% charge. I think it'll still operate without the engine running.
Right.
You're gonna need to go out and run it until you run all that fuel out of it and put new fuel in it at maybe a year.
Are you storing it in a climate controlled environment? Is your garage a climate controlled environment?
No, but it never gets below freezing out there. It's all insulated and stuff. I don't have any heat in there, but it never gets below freezing.
I'm with Russ. I think I wouldn't be too worried about it until after maybe if it was getting to be a year and you knew that hadn't ran. You might You might be able to put some fuel additive in the tank. Some Justice Brothers fuel additive. There's others that you can use, but I think I'd be after a year. I'd want to go out and say, all right, we're going to take this thing on a trip, or we're going to leg it out a little bit and just burn this fuel through it and get some fresh gas into it. Other than that, I wouldn't worry about too much. The engineers knew this was going to happen.
They hope.
Yeah.
And so they've got a plan, but we just know certain fuels after a year, I would want to leg it out and use it up and put some fresh stuff and fill the tank again.
Yeah, and I don't really go a whole year or anything like that. It's going to be 3 or 4 months.
Don't worry about
it. And then I will take a trip someplace.
Don't worry about it.
No, you'll be fine. If you're putting at least one tank in every 3 or 4 months, you'll be...
Yeah, don't worry about it at all.
You'll be fine.
That is, it is interesting that because it's his daily driver, I would feel the same. I would be like, I might go 4 months without the engine running, but I wouldn't hesitate for a second to park my Pontiac in November and take it out in March. I wouldn't think about the fuel for 1 second in that situation. So if you think about it as a storage, 4 months is nothing. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to Minnesota and talk to Paul. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Paul, what can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. I have a 2011 3/4 ton Chevy pickup with a 6-liter, and it feels like the torque converter is not letting go. So once in a while, when you come up to a stop sign, it will all of a sudden just stop the motor. But the other thing to this is that I think the rear main seal is leaking. Would that have anything to do with it?
Think they all leak. No, they're not combined, but that rear main, they all leak. I did 2 in the last 2 weeks. They leak all the time, even on new engines. They're just
on the
horrible.
6-liters, huh?
Yeah, the 5.3s, 6.0s, 4.8s, it doesn't matter. They all leak out that back cover. So you got to pull the tranny to do that. Oh, transmission.
Yep.
You got to remove
I figured.
it.
Okay.
You've got to pull that out and just pop the cover on. It's not too hard once you get it out of there. But at that point, you could put a torque converter in if you want, but I mean, you may have a torque converter issue. We've had some of those, but we also see problems in the valve body with the solenoid hanging up in the valve. So if you got to pull it out,
the transmission itself.
Right. But if you got to pull that thing out to fix the rear main, that is the time to put a torque converter in it if you have any question about it, because it's right there. It's laying on the ground.
Yeah.
Let's put it in there. Pull it out, put a torque converter in it, put that rear main in it, and then if you still have your issue, pull that pan off of there. That's an 11. Yeah, pull the pan off. It's got the transmission module in the valve body. In that one.
I was just trying to figure out what.
All right.
And so then you'd.
Depending on which transmission you have in there.
Yeah, I think he's got the unit that has the valve body integrated with the controller right inside of it, I believe.
And it's all, so you'd replace the whole thing with the solenoids, the valve body, the whole bit, if it's that transmission.
But Russ, now let's just. Paul's does plenty of mechanical stuff. He's called the show before.
Doesn't do it every time.
I think he might have hung up already.
I think he's gone. He went to replace it. Oh, there we go.
Does this transmission do this every time you stop? Like if you've got up to 40 miles an hour and come to a stop, will it die every single time?
No, it's just intermittent.
Okay, good. Because you have to get it up at least to that, let's say 40 in a steady cruise in order to lock that thing up and get it into higher gear where it can lock up. If it's intermittent, though, you might try some cleaner. We use the Justice Brothers transmission fluid service cleaner in there. Only going to be found at professional shops in most cases, but you can get it at some of the auto parts stores if you look around here in our local region and Minnesota region. If you put the cleaner in there and then drive it in the conditions that would normally lock it up, it can help clean that circuit out. If you just put it in there and idle, won't do a bit of good because it's not being activated. You got to get on the road, get it up into the top 2 gears and let that thing lock up and then unlock it. Then lock it up and unlock it. So slow down, speed up, steady cruise, slow down, speed up, steady cruise. Get it to clean itself out and then flush the transmission. That may fix your whole problem in the valve body. But you're still going to have to pull the transmission out in order to fix that rear seal.
Paul, I think I'd try the cleaner conditioner first and see if you can make the problem be less. And if that's the case, then maybe when you get in there, all you're doing is fixing a rear seal.
Okay.
Sure.
If you want to take order of events. Right. And if the problem was bad enough and the conditioner didn't fix it and you didn't have any codes, you might load the transmission up and take it over to one of our local transmission shops and say, hey, why don't you guys check this thing out while I've got it out? And they could maybe find that, hey, we need to do this, couple seals. It costs you just a little bit of money instead of a lot of money.
Do you bring it into the lobby or do you tell them to come out and get it? I mean, what are they going to do?
Paul knows, he's been around. I know Paul. And so he knows where to bring it to. But yes, you don't just bring it in the lobby.
Hey,
Chris.
Here it is.
You're going to have called them first, and you're going to have a conversation.
Paul, thanks very much for the call. That is, I got fed a video the other day about automatic transmissions, and it was an animation of a new automatic transmission. I don't believe it. I don't think. No, I watched a couple videos about animations about how automatic transmissions work. No way. Nope. I'm not buying it. The way the gears turn.
Doesn't work that way.
I think it's just pretend. You had a message.
I do. I've got Michael from Minnesota. He sent a message and said he listens to the Under the Hood show in Pipestone, Minnesota, and they're struggling with their 2005 Avalanche. They crank the engine 3-4 times, turn the key back, it cranks 3 more times, won't fire. Checked it, had spark, fuel, all good. Check fuses, relays, tried to leave the key on 11 minutes to unlock the security setting, had plow put on to drive home, next day won't fire. Been sitting now for 2 months. and I sent him back a note already because I said, you have to call the show. The Under the Hood show's closed today. But I said, that's a big challenge when it's intermittent like that. Like on that era of a vehicle, you got Silverados, Sierras with those 5.3s and we see this every once in a while, Russ. What are the biggest culprits that you'll run across?
Voltage. You plug the scanner in. Make sure you've got ignition 1 voltage, ignition 2 voltage. You got the feedback voltage coming back. There's another pit on there where it says ignition 1, ignition 2 feedback. That's coming from the ignition relay. If you got a bad ignition relay, you won't see any feedback coming back from that, even though it's commanded on. And you got to find all those because all those need to have power to that computer, or she's not going to run.
So you can have fuel, but you may not have injector pulse.
The engine will without that ignition 2 feedback, the engine will crank. You'll see an RPM signal on the scanner, and people say, "Well, I got an RPM signal." It says, "But you don't have any injectors turning on." And you may even get a theft light intermittent on there, and that could all be because you have a bad fuse box under the hood. We've seen a number of those. Bad relay, seen those too.
So there's a number of things that it could be, and that's what I just said. I go, this is a tough one when they're hit and miss like that. Yeah. It's what drives mechanics a little bit crazy because he said he's talked to a couple of mechanics, and I'm sure they're probably saying, "Hey, we could do this, but I can't guarantee it's going to fix it. We could do this, and it all costs money."
Yeah, I really shy away from a lot of this intermittent no start and stuff anymore. I tell people if it is dead,
at least right now it's dead right now according to his message.
If it's dead and it stays dead, there's some of those we'll work on depending on our workload. Some of them we will not. It just depends on what we choose at the time. Right now we would not because we've got way too much there to do that. I know I got 10 cars. I know what's wrong with every one of them. Unbolt, bolt on, fix this, fix that, done. I don't have time to look at this and spend a little. If you want me to look at it, it's going to cost you this much an hour, and I'm going to invest 2 hours into it, 3 hours if you want to spend a little more. It's up to you. And then if we don't find it, we're done. We're not going to work on it anymore at all. And you spent your money.
Until it dies.
It's your choice.
Yeah. And that's not uncommon at a lot of repair shops anymore.
And it's to protect, it's to not make them.
Well, and it's more to it if they say, well, this does this every 10 minutes or so, it does it while I'm driving it. But then what happens? Well, then it starts running good again. Don't even bother bringing it in because I have to catch it, find the problem, be able to duplicate it, fix it, make sure it works, put it back the way it was, make sure it's broken again, put it back again. Now it's fixed. Okay, I know I fixed the problem.
Or fixed a problem.
Yeah, I have to duplicate it. If it's working, well, look, you can see it right now. See, it just died. I'll go out and restart it, and it'll be fine. I don't know what that is.
Right.
How am I supposed to figure it out?
It's a conundrum.
Yeah, it's a much more difficult thing than it was years ago. And people are like, "What am I supposed to?" And I feel for them. I've got my own car that has problems. It's like,
sure.
Hey, this is my only car. It's a 2020 and it's doing this. What am I supposed to do? Nobody wants to fix it. You're right. They don't. It's part of owning a car.
That made me feel a little bit hopeless right there when Russ said, I have that with my car even. I'm like, oh, well, if you do, what hope is there for me? Nothing.
It's sad.
Here's a question from the chat that we only got a minute here. Hey guys, I have a 96 Chevy K1500 pickup, recently lost fourth gear. Is it best to find a good used transmission, have a shop rebuild it, or is it simple enough to rebuild it myself? And asking that question says something.
Yourself? No, but they are one of the most rebuildable yourself if you had the tools.
Okay.
I'm not going to do one, although I know how to rebuild it. There's a couple tools I'd have to buy. I could probably pick up on Amazon. They're pretty cheap, but I'm not going to do it.
So have it rebuilt?
We had a very handy hoodie not long ago with his Ford Escape that he went ahead and he bought the parts and he watched videos and he rebuilt his transmission. And
it's possible.
It can be done if you're the fact that he asked the question.
That's what
is what you were getting at. That he goes, I maybe could do this. Well, you might be able to, but you might get it done and it doesn't work either.
Yeah.
It's
up to you.
But
so is this one you would attempt if it were yours?
No,
and not you.
No.
No, I'm gonna buy a known good used transmission for me, depending on what the use of the truck is. If I'm gonna use this truck for the next 10 years and I drive it a lot, I'm probably looking for a remanufactured transmission to put in it.
That's what I did to mine.
And they're available
when it went out.
At this age and this.
Yeah, they're still expensive in that truck. That's why he's asking this question.
Yeah.
Even the used ones are still expensive.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Until next time, you can find us at underthehoodshow.com. Thanks for listening to the Under the Hood Show. All right. Anything for the after show? Not really, huh? I think we're
just to be after. Just so people can see us let our hair down.
Just
a
to
little bit.
do it. It's the reason we're doing it.
Yeah,
right now.
Every once in a while, people want to know what happens afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Do they? Do they really? You think?
If they made it this far, they're probably just going.
It's just still on. If you're, I think if you get this far, it's on. And you're like, oh, what are they? Oh, it's the after show.
Is there a few people still looking? Can you see?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I can see. As I did that, like 4 just dropped off. Just like you said.
Come back. Where'd you go?
It just,
it's done.
It just went while I was watching. Like they were timing it for your question.
People's tendency, I'm learning this. It's taken me my whole life to learn it. There's sometimes I'm thinking about something or I'm feeling something. I'm like, that's an original thought.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
Or my tendency right there, that must be just me that does that.
Uh-huh.
And then as you pay attention, you realize, no.
There's a Facebook page
everybody
dedicated
has the same
to it.
thought.
Yeah.
Everybody's had the same tendency. I think a lot of people have the same tolerance level for how long they'll put up with something. And I think the people that can figure that out sooner in their life are a lot more comfortable.
I remember the specific moment when a friend of mine, who I had made this friend later in life. It wasn't a childhood friend. And somehow it came up and he said something that made me think we were fated to meet. Because he said to me, and I've since brought this up and other people have confirmed, other people think I'm crazy. When I was a kid, we've talked about this when we used to just watch cars go by because you're a little kid and we didn't have the internet. I used to think, I wonder if I'm the only person in the world right now looking at a red light on a busy street and standing on one foot. Or am I the only person with a stick right now touching a stoplight? And he said he had that thought once when he was a little kid walking home from school. He started walking backwards. Am I the only person in the whole world right now walking backwards home from 3rd grade? And I thought, no, you must not be, because I had those same thoughts when I was a kid.
It's fun to just imagine.
And then you think there's 7-8 billion people in the world? There's probably that, and that's just this universe. Not all the parallel universes. So it's going on. There's probably a podcast right now that's on after the podcast is over, talking about how many people are viewing or listening to their podcast. That's probably happening right now because there's so many podcasts.
I know I've brought this up maybe too many times, but whatever year it was, the Super Bowl commercial for GoDaddy, when they had people having their breakthroughs all at the same time, and then all across the world, they were showing people having the same idea.
How many times have we done
That was a great that was a great commercial.
Yeah.
It impacted me. I remembered it for every time. They're like, oh, I've got this great idea. And then they showed somebody in India having the same great idea. And somebody, it was funny. It was really funny.
Funny to think is we've had that. How long has this building been here? That we're sitting.
2018, we moved into this building.
So
completely.
7 years.
Yep.
And
Wow,
it was
7 years.
It was
Yeah.
That's why I sent you that text the other day when I saw the date. We've had this it's weird to think that we had this exact conversation and it was as soon as 7 years ago about the door hinge.
Yeah.
The self-rising butt hinge.
Yeah.
You never even put them on.
No, because someone else had invented it. We didn't even use it. We were like, we should make
If we
this.
found it, let's not get it.
Yeah, we don't need it. But that is a perfect example of, I have an idea.
They're on there.
They're on. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
There's been stuff I've looked for that I can't find. I'm like, I don't really need it that bad. Either does anity else. They wouldn't want to pay for it.
Apparently, I've done that. You know what I need is this piece. So I look it up and it doesn't exist. And I think, I must not need it. Because if I needed it, someone would have.
Well, as soon as you looked it up, now AI created it.
Yeah, somebody went, hey, somebody looked for that piece. Let's make it. Yeah, for sure.
That's scary.
All right, there we go.
Original thought's going to die. Scares me.
That's a good. Not me. I think we'll be gone before then.
Okay.
So that we don't have to worry about it. Our kids,
do it right
they're
now.
in trouble.
Yeah, they are in trouble.
Yeah. That's what I think about.
I tell my kids all the time, do not lose original thought. Do not lose original thought. Just because
what a weird
it is,
dad.
But I'll watch my daughter doing something and then they'll jump on Chat GPT or and they'll get an idea.
You're gonna be laying around in the floaty chairs, eating the food in the ship. Wally.
Yeah. All right.
I'd never get a chance to listen to all my audio.
There you go with 15 minutes of
not gonna have an after show.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Hit subscribe. I mean, you've waited this long. Go for it.